I now call this meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the Wiseburn Unified School District Board Meeting, January 13th, 2021. A thank you and a welcome to all in our community, our educators, our staff, of course, our volunteer board members here tonight, as well as the cabinet. Thank you all for the commitment you are all continuing to make in these continuously challenging COVID times. The relentless COVID will not let us loose. Ms. Caneda is not able to join us this evening. She shared her sincere apologies therein. She asked that we share her absence due to a death in the family, her immediate family, and our thoughts and condolences go out to you and your family, Joanne. We have a regular board meeting tonight, a public hearing on school renaming, a special presentation from a financial advisor, recreation update, no doubt many COVID updates from the cabinet. So at this time, I ask for a motion to adopt the agenda from my fellow board members, please.
You have a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Second.
Thank you. Ms. Subaki, a vote, please.
Mr. Banuelos?
Aye.
Dr. Goldman?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Mr. Moore?
Aye.
Motion carries. Before we progress, I will read out a closed session reporting statement. In closed session at the December 14th, 2021 board meeting, by a vote of 4-0 with members Roger Banuelos, Neil Goldman, Joanne Caneda, and Nelson Martinez in favor, and member Israel Mora absent, the governing board of the Wiseburn Unified School District met to consider and approve a recommendation to suspend from employment employee number 8773, a classified employee, for 3 days without pay. The employee was informed of the right to appeal the board's decision and did not appeal within the prescribed timeline. As such, the board's decision is final, and the dates of suspension will be imposed on January 19th, 2022 through and including January 21st, 2022. Let's now turn to our standard agenda, and as we always do, give credence and thanks to our country with the flag salute. Dr. Harbeck, if you would be so kind.
Please stand, hand on our heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated.
Thank you, Dr. Harbeck. Before going to public comments, our next item on the agenda, our most tenured board member of 20 years, former president of this body for multiple terms, and a dedicated model public servant, Mr. Israel Mora, would like to share some words. Mr. Mora?
Thank you, Dr. Goldman. Good evening, everyone. I first would like to thank all our teachers, our classified employees, and our administration for your dedication during these very challenging times. You've been amazing during these almost 2 years, can you believe it, of uncertainty and change. Always focused on our kids, always giving it your all. I truly appreciate and applaud all your efforts, and I thank you. It is with mixed emotions that I am announcing my resignation from the Wiseburn Board of Directors, effective February 11th. After 20 years of service, it is time to hand off the baton. I'd like to begin by thanking my wife, Mari, and my 2 boys, Sandra and Agustin, for being so supportive, patient, for all the hours that I put in for the district. I could not have done it without their support, their encouragement, and their love. So I thank them very much. I'm very proud of what we have achieved in the last 20 years. We have rebuilt all our schools, 4 brand new and 1 renovated. Our community is very proud of our schools, not just the buildings, but for the learning that goes on inside and the love and the community that is shared. I could not have been more pleased in the education our sons received at Wiseburn. It set a great foundation for their growth and success. Very honored to have been part of creating the Vinci schools. The energy and excitement I see in our students at the Vinci still gives me goosebumps every time I go visit. It's a special place and a lot of special learning going on. I want to give a thank you to the teachers, the staff of Da Vinci for all their hard work in creating Da Vinci's culture and academic success. I'm grateful to have served with my fellow board members, each and every one very dedicated, always making decisions based on what is best for our students, teachers, staff, and our community. It has been a pleasure to work with each one of you. Joanne, with whom I ran my first 2 elections 20 years ago, she's been an inspiration. Nelson, Roger, and Neil, you're amazing role models, always trying to do what is right, doing it with professionalism and with grace. I've also had the privilege of working with 2 amazing superintendents, Dr. Tom Johnstone and Dr. Blake Silvers. No one can match Tom's high energy, positive attitude, and no quit perseverance. There was nothing Tom could not achieve. Blake is a pleasure to work with, very positive, great with people, and always has our students' best interest in mind. He's on a great road of success as well. I thank you both very much. I leave you to carry on the great work at Wiseburn, knowing that I leave it in great hands. So thank you all. It's been a privilege to serve on the Wiseburn Unified Board of Directors.
Thank you, Mr. Mora. Any comments from the board? No requirement, of course. And before you say anything, Dr. Silvers, Mr. Mora did get a chance to share this with me prior. I would ask that we put together some kind of proclamation or recognition at that final board meeting. It's just not enough to have this moment to recognize Israel for his service. In fact, let me share this, if I may. Israel, you have been an exemplar model board member. You were a mentor to me as the president who took me under your wing and taught me the ropes as my immediate predecessor. You have been a multi-decade dear, dear friend, and that's not going away, I hope. But I wanted to thank you for your leadership and your dedication. My own children's experience personally, as well as I believe that of our community, unquestionably has been dramatically improved because of your commitment and your leadership in our district. You will be tremendously missed on the board. You are not retiring because you've quit. You're still in your prime. So thank you so very much.
Thank you, Neil.
I have a few comments. Oh, go ahead,
Roger.
Nelson.
Go ahead.
I have a few comments to share as well. I wanted to say thank you, Israel. Thank you so much for your tremendous dedication, commitment, and passion to Wiseburn Unified School District and overall to our community. It's been absolutely our privilege, my privilege, to serve with you on the Wiseburn Unified School District Board. And as everyone knows, it was the Wiseburn School District when we started here, when I joined the board, and now it's the Wiseburn Unified School District. Another huge accomplishment during your tenure as well while you were on the board. I also had an opportunity to serve with you on the Da Vinci board. And also very grateful for your contributions and achievements that you've made towards that school and our continuing education there for Da Vinci schools. I actually was able to meet you and get to know you more through the board, which is an amazing feat in terms of all the work that we've been put in. And I want to say thank you again. And as a result of having met you through the board, I consider you a lifelong friend. So thank you so much, Israel, for all your contributions. And to echo Neil's comments, that's not going to go away. So we're still members of the community. I look forward to seeing you in the neighborhood and continuing to collaborate and pick your brain from time to time as well. You have tremendous knowledge and history of our school district and community. Hope I can always reach out to you for some guidance as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger.
I also wanted to just take a moment and thank you, Israel, too, as well, for everything that both Neil and Roger said, your leadership, your passion, and really your commitment to the community and the kids of Wiseburn. Thank you very much. It's been an honor and privilege to serve with you over the 15 years. I'll never forget that you and Joanne took me in. And as Neil said, you've also been a mentor to me early on and continue to be a mentor to me. So I really appreciate everything you've done. And I consider you a lifelong friend. I consider you a brother. So thank you very much for everything that you've done. Thank you.
Well, again, thank you, Israel. More to come here. I'm glad you will be with us for, it looks like 2 more board meetings then?
The February 10th meeting will be my last.
All right. And Joanne would no doubt have additional words, and we'll have a chance to do that again. So you get to endure this again, Israel. So
Dr. Goldman, I have a few comments. Should I wait until my, I can wait until my comments though, if I didn't want to.
If it's relevant to Mr. Moore, go ahead.
Okay, Israel, I want to just thank you very much for your leadership and your mentorship. And most importantly, the first question that you always ask me is, how's your family? You always ask how my kids are doing, how my wife is doing. And, I think that just speaks volumes for, where your mind is and where your head is, and really is a role model to me, just to keep, centered on what's really important. And so while I appreciate, the professional advice that you've given me, including not wearing a tie, which I didn't follow very, very well. No, aside from the very, very, very strong professional advice and mentorship that you've given me, you also centered me on the very, very important things in life, the family, the friends, and those things that really, really matter. So thank you very much. It's bittersweet, but I thank you for everything.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. 20 years. That's one of the longest serving tenured board members in the history of the Wiseburn Unified School District. So thank you again. Let us continue now with our agenda. We'll turn shortly to public comments, but before doing that, we want to acknowledge those individuals who commented on the website, on the district website, share your thoughts. Each meeting, again, I try to share these to give you a flavor for them, but retain the anonymity that was expected. There were a few themes that emerged in the comments over the past couple of weeks, most of them relating to COVID and concerns to keep us all safe. Thank you to the district leadership for that. More testing and a desire to increase the frequency of testing, as well as appreciation for testing, and also an ask for increased efficiency in testing at our sites. There was a single comment about renaming, which is relevant later to our public hearing, and the only 2 words were shared: simply change it. I didn't know how to paraphrase that. We also remind everybody that this is a board meeting held in public, so we cannot respond to public comments, but we will effectively have 2 public comments sections this evening. The first will be our standard public comments. The second will be those comments related to our public hearing on school renaming. If you have a comment related to school renaming, we ask that you hold it for this first public comment section, as it will pertain to the renaming section immediately following. So Ms. Subaki, we'll turn to you to remind everybody you have 3 minutes, a maximum of 20 minutes per board bylaw 9323. And Ms. Subaki will remind you with 30 seconds remaining with a red card. As such, Ms. Subaki, any comments again to the public? Please keep these 2 things not related to school renaming. We'll get there in a moment.
Looks like I have one comment at this time from Maria Flores Acosta. If we could please slide her over. And I will start a timer, Ms. Acosta, once you're ready. And where'd she go? Okay, perhaps she's gonna wait for the second section because it looks like she took her hand down. So Ms. Acosta, if you'd like to wait, we do not have any other public comments at this time.
All right, then we will close public comments and move to our public hearing, Wiseburn Unified School District school renaming. We'll open this public hearing at 6:15 p.m. And do we need a reading to begin it, or just open to public comments?
We're open to public comments. So if anyone would like to make a public comment regarding the Wiseburn school renaming, you can hover over the middle of the screen. There's a raise hand button, and we can call you over. Ms. Acosta, if you would like to make your comment, if you just wanted to click the middle of the screen where it says raise hand, and we could bring you over if you'd like. or if anyone else has any comments. Okay. Here we go. Can we please slide Ms. Acosta over, please? Hi, Maria.
I'd like to thank the board for offering this renaming process. I am a member of the Citizens Action Committee. I do want to express some disappointment in getting information to the community. I just became aware of this portion of the meeting or public hearing yesterday and did my best to try to contact and reach out to more community members. It is very important that we keep all of the community within the Wiseburn Unified School District informed of actions that the board takes, especially when they opt in to receive communication. That's the extent of my comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Costa.
Thank you. We have a second comment. Once we return Ms. Acosta, there is a comment from Bailey 5. Or maybe not. Okay. Looks like we don't have any other further comments right now.
I do know, I believe you received comments. Go ahead, Wendy.
Sorry, I'm not sure. Bailey 5 put their hand up and took it down. I'm sure we can always return. If Bailey 5, if you'd like to make a comment, you just need to hover over the center of the screen and click raise hand, and we can slide you over. Okay.
And Ms. Subaki, I believe there may have been some written comments.
Not for me to read for the meeting.
Wendy, I believe there are two comments that came in. I can read them from, I believe we had one from Kathy Gore and then one from, I believe the last name was Ms. Sanders. Because it's a public hearing, let's read those into the record. I don't mind reading them if.
I can read them. I can read them. Okay. The first one is from Kathy Gore. Hello to the Wiseburn Unified School District school board members, staff, renaming committee members, and community members. As a parent of 3 Wiseburn students and as a 25-year resident of this community, I wish to voice my opinion against the renaming of Anza, Cabrillo, and R.H. Dana middle schools. There are significant costs and resources attached to a renaming endeavor such as this. It's essentially rebranding 3 businesses. A simple internet search indicates the cost for rebranding a small business to be in the 6-figure range. Then do that times 3 schools makes the expense even higher. I recommend you demonstrate fiscal responsibility to save the district from these unnecessary expenses and outlay of resources. Or if you feel that Wiseburn has this kind of fiscal surplus and bandwidth, then I would suggest that the expenses and resources that would be used for renaming our schools could be better spent on teachers, curriculum, infrastructure, essentially for the betterment of our students and staff. I urge you to vote against renaming our schools. I did complete the community survey. In my opinion, however, the historical perspective presentation and the survey itself was skewed in a manner leading the survey taker to a seemingly foregone conclusion that the historical figures for whom our schools are named are bad and thus are not representative of Wiseburn values. The survey did not offer the opportunity to state the argument or opinion against renaming, aside from other comments. There were basically 2 questions for each school. Do you recommend that X school be renamed? And is X someone who represents all of Wiseburn's assurances? Certainly there are more pressing issues at hand during these challenging times. School reopening doesn't seem like a reasonable priority, Let's move forward with renaming the former Peter Burnett Elementary or keeping it to the current name of 138th Street School and move on to more important issues. Respectfully submitted, Kathy Gore. The second one that we received is from Michelle Sanders. Hello to the Wiseburn School Board members, staff, renaming committee members, and community members. As a parent of 2 students at Juan de Anza and as a 6-year resident of this community, I wish to voice my opinion against the renaming of Anza, Cabrillo, and RH Dana Middle Schools. There are significant costs and resources attached to a renaming endeavor such as this. It's essentially rebranding 3 businesses. A simple internet search indicates the cost for rebranding a small business to be in the 6-figure range. Then do that times 3 schools makes the expense even higher. I recommend you demonstrate fiscal responsibility to save the district from these unnecessary expenses and outlay of resources. Or if you feel that Wiseburn has this kind of fiscal surplus and bandwidth, then I would suggest that the expenses and resources that would be used for renaming our schools could be better spent on teachers, curriculum, infrastructure, essentially for the betterment of our students and staff. I urge you to vote against renaming our schools. Certainly there are more pressing issues at hand during these challenging times. School renaming doesn't seem like a reasonable priority. Let's move forward with the renaming of the former Peter Burnett Elementary or keeping it to the current name of 138th Street School and move on to more important issues. Regards, Sanders family. And I do also have one comment, if we could possibly slide over Devash Banks, please.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Hi, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to make a comment. First of all, I want to thank you all for, going through this process. I think it shows a lot about the board and the school district that there are things that we should or probably want to reconsider as the times change. So I thank you for going through this process and making it available for the community to voice our opinion. I am a parent of 2 kids at Juan de Anza. We're new to the community. We just moved about a year ago. And I'm very excited about this process. I would like to voice my opinion that I don't think, I also filled out the survey. I don't think that the names represent, of the 3 schools at question, represent the values of our community. And I would like to explore the option of renaming the schools. I think the question at hand right now is, should we embark on the process? Of course, any financial consideration will have to be taken into account. And if the process itself is going to be cost prohibitive, we don't have to continue with it. But I did want to express my opinion, and I wanted to say that the names of our schools represent a lot for community members, for parents, and for students. And in my opinion, is something that people should be proud of and wear on their sleeve, literally and figuratively, every single day. And if there are community members that cannot do that because those names are associated with things that they're not proud of or cannot feel connected to, or have bad connotations, I think that we should at least consider changing the names. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Ms. Ubaki, any others?
At this time, I do not have any other comments.
As this is the public hearing section, I see any comments from the board at this time? Hearing none, let's close the public hearing at 6:25. Thank you for your comments, everybody. We'll now move to a special presentation, item 3.4, on the report from the WUSD Financial Advisor. Dr. Silvers?
Sure, I think Jason could bring over Tim Carty. We've had the pleasure of working with Tim for about 2 years now, and just really excited to hear what he has to say today, to give us a sort of a financial update and overview. I think we listed several bullet points related to our current bond, or state with our current bonds, as well as an overview of 2022 and next steps for Wiseburn related to some refunding or refinancing of bonds potentially in the future. I know this was requested from Dr. Goldman, I believe, to talk about the refunding. So Tim is here with us today. Welcome, Tim, and glad to have you.
Sure. Well, thank you, Blake. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board. It's nice to see all of you. I'm Tim Carty from Piper Sandler, the district's financial advisor. And yes, I mean, you have an action item on your agenda a little bit later to bring aboard a strategic consultant to help the district think about would a future bond measure, maybe in November of 2022, be feasible and in the district's best interest. So we thought what might be helpful this evening is just a little review of, again, the basics of general obligation bonds, what it means to put a bond measure on the ballot, perhaps for some board members that might not have been through this before. Also, remind ourselves a little bit about what Wiseburn Unified School District has done in the past in terms of bond measures. And then, as Blake pointed out, just a hypothetical, what might be possible for the district in a November 2022 bond measure, and what is the status of refinancing any existing bonds, and then any other topics that I can cover while I'm here with you to be helpful in any way that I can. So we did put together some slides, and Wendy, is someone on your end going to help me with those and advance those? Thank you so much. So we just titled it Overview of the Basics and Review of Past General Obligation Bond Programs, and then there's a little bit more about the future toward the tail end of the brief presentation. So let's go to section 1, which is just an overview of the basics. This may be familiar to some of you, but it might be helpful to just do a little refresher if we look at the next page. So school district is a widely used mechanism to fund capital facilities by school districts in California, the general obligation bond vehicle. You need 55% to win. In 2022, the November gubernatorial election is really the date on which school districts that are considering bonds are focused. A district could be on the ballot in June, but that time frame is just coming right up on us. So November of 2022 is what's realistic. For a K-12 unified school district, the most we could ask voters to pay is $60 per $100,000 per year. And again, that's tax value. That's not the market value of property. That's what they call the assessed value. On a 5-member board, 4 affirmative votes are required to place a bond measure on the ballot. So 3-2 doesn't do it, 3-1 doesn't do it. You need 4 affirmative votes. The board makes a lot of decisions when it comes to put a bond measure on the ballot. Not only does it approve the resolution calling the election, which includes the 75-word ballot question and the project list, but it also prioritizes projects that might be funded with the bond measure. And then every time we take a bond draw, legal documentation comes back to the board, and the board always gets an opportunity to take a look at what's being proposed. A citizens oversight committee is required, and that allows accountability, annual audits, transparency to be provided to the public. So just a little bit of a high-level review of the basic parameters of a general obligation bond measure. What can be funded? Essentially, capital facilities, the construction or improvement to real property. That's construction, modernization, repair, safety and security, but also the furnishing of school facilities, the equipping, which includes technology, can also be funded. What cannot be funded? Regular operating expenses, regular employee salaries and benefits, pension costs, those kind of items. And often it's important to point out to voters that a bond is only for capital facilities. Regular operating expenses are funded separately under the LCFF program. Who are some of the professionals involved in assisting a school district pass a general obligation bond measure? There's really 4. We're in the upper right in green, upper left in green, I should say, the financial advisor. We help build the financial plan that gets presented to the voters. In the red in the upper right, there's a legal counsel who drafts the materials that the board would approve that would appear in the voter pamphlet on which voters vote. The lower left in dark blue, that's the action item that you're going to be asked to approve later this evening, a strategic consultant to help the district explore the feasibility. And then as part of that, the lower right there in lavender is a pollster who can help with some scientific, reliable public opinion polling where we can gauge how the community feels about projects, tax rates, the general feasibility of a bond measure, those sorts of things. And I always put facilities plan in the center because that's really the key to passing a bond measure. There has to be a need which the community recognizes. So the capital facilities plan, the need, and I know you've had a facilities master plan prepared, that's a driver, and all of the other consultants feed off of that, if you will. In our role as your financial advisor, when we put together a financing plan for a school district to be placed before the voters, there's really 5 ingredients that go into that. The total amount, the authorization, the large amount that we would ask voters to approve, the phasing and the timing. Very few school districts get all the money from a bond measure up front. It's normally taken in different draws over time. The term, individual draws are like home mortgages, 25, 30-year terms. The tax rate, even though $60 per 100,000 is the most we can ask for, not every unified district actually asks for that. Some ask for something less. And then a key item, I always put this on, assessed valuation. You know, sometimes you might talk to a trustee in another school district who might say, we passed a bond measure, but we can't get the money. And you'd ask, well, how's that possible? It's possible if the assumption about assessed valuation was not realistic. So it's important to build a bond measure, not too conservatively, not too aggressively, but right down the middle when it comes to future performance of assessed valuation growth. And I'll get into that a little bit more. So that's a little bit of a summary of just what I would call, you know, the basics of a general obligation bond measure. And many of you are probably familiar with those, but I just thought a little refresher might be helpful before we start looking at the future. So in the next section, and I tried to make this brief, and you're, I think, probably all familiar with this, but what has Wiseburn, both as an elementary school district and then as a unified school district, done in the past? So there are really 4 general obligation bond measures that are on the books on which taxpayers are paying taxes. Measure W from 1997, Measure E from 2000, Measure A from 2007, and then the most recent one, Measure AA, by far the largest bond measure, from 2010. All of them have issued all their bond authority. If you look at the second bullet from the bottom, those are the tax rates levied by Los Angeles County in the current year for each of the bond measures. And then if you look at the very bottom, and this is important, when do they come off the books? And the reason I have those arrows on Measure W and Measure E, they come off the books 1 in 23-24 and 1 in 25-26. That's not that far away. Their combined tax rate this year is a little bit over $31. There's certainly an opportunity to pass a bond measure this November, take a draw in 2023, but not have the tax start until 2026-27, after W and E are both off the books. Not to say we would do this or not do this, but there is a possibility, an option available to us that we might be able to say to the community, for the same $31 you're already paying, give us a new bond measure and we won't start the tax on the new one until Measure W and Measure E are both off the book. So think about that, not to say we would or we wouldn't, but we do have that opportunity that a lot of school districts would not have because of the timing of when our oldest bond measures come off the books. So what about the future? So what I thought would be helpful to take a look at is just a base case, not customized, hypothetical, what might be obtainable for us. We looked at putting something on the ballot in November 2022, just to get you thinking. I always like to look at just general assumptions. And what I did for just talking purposes is I didn't take $60 per 100,000, I took 30. Remember on the previous slide, the those two oldest bond measures, W and E, that come off the books, $31 tax rate. So let's just say we looked at a new $30 tax rate, which essentially would replace that. Base case, 4 equal draws over 10 years, year 1, year 4, year 7, year 10, fairly typical for a California school district. All traditional current interest bonds, so none of the expensive capital appreciation bonds that used to be done but have really fallen out of favor in the last half dozen years or so. And there's that second bullet from the bottom. I mentioned assessed valuation. Just as a planning tool, I used 4% as a year-over-year rate of change. Our historical rate of growth is 4.88%, so a little on the conservative side. And I used 4% as an average interest rate for bonds. That's about 1% higher than the prevailing rates today. But if we're going to be issuing bonds over the next decade, we have to make some allowance that interest rates may be higher than they are today. We've been in a very low interest rate environment for a number of years now. So again, I try to build these bond programs a touch on the conservative side. So if we looked at that, what might it generate? That's the next slide. And again, this is not customized. This is just a base case to get you thinking. But if you look at the light blue stripe toward the top, about $124 million would be generated with a $30 tax rate at 4% assessed valuation growth, 4 draws over 10 years. And that's, again, without the benefit of polling, without the benefit of you as the board prioritizing projects. But if you're just interested in, is there a starting point, a number that might get us thinking and we can engage in conversation going forward, just for tonight's purposes, to put a number out there that could be an initial starting point, about $124 million, just to give you something to think about. Just to put it in perspective, you know, the bond we passed for El Segundo Unified School District in 2018 was $98 million. If we look at the next slide, I mentioned assessed valuation and why it's important. 4%, I just, for tonight's purposes, used as a planning tool. This is the last 20 years for Wiseburn, both when it was an elementary district and as a unified. And you see over at the right, 4.88% being the average. And then you see some of the detail. You know, it picks up a couple of busts, you know, the sort of the dot-com bust in the early part of the 2000s. Then it picks up the Great Recession. And then it picks up sort of the boom years we've had in recent times. You notice in the current year, even though we had growth, it was very modest growth. And I think a lot of that is COVID related. I think a lot of the business properties in the district probably filed for appeals from Los Angeles County or were granted appeals without even having to file. But I think, you know, 4% is a pretty good rate, because that 4.88 does pick up booms and busts. And I didn't go all the way to 4.88, but using 4%. And again, that's just for tonight. We can look at alternatives. We could decide on a higher or a lower rate if we place something on the ballot. But again, just to give you a little something to begin the thought process. Now, let's say we thought we do want to explore the feasibility of November 2022. Not to say we will, not to say we won't. What might a month-by-month timeline look like? That's the next slide. So tonight, we're having a presentation for you, and you do have an action item later to approve a contract with a strategic consultant. So let's say you approve that. What we do over the next couple of months, I think, would be draft a scientifically reliable public opinion poll to put in the field and bring back results of that to the board, let's say in March. Let's say it's favorable, it's a green light. That would give us a couple of months for community outreach to talk to key influencers in the community, key stakeholders, both internal to the district and external community leaders. Hey, we've had a poll done. We're not saying we're not going to put a bond on the ballot, but we're thinking about it. What do you think? And we'd have the polling results in hand, so we know how the community feels about projects, tax rates, themes, arguments for and against, that sort of thing. If the results of that were favorable, that would give us June and July to present to you, the board, first draft election materials before you have to vote. So you can wordsmith them, you can look at the ballot language, you can look at the project list. There's time to think about it before a vote is taken. The last day on which election materials can be delivered to the LA County Register of Voters in Norwalk is Friday, August 12th. So a school board could act in July, a school board could act first part of August. Then if it's on the ballot, obviously there would be a privately funded independent citizens campaign committee that would advocate for the bond. And November 8th, 2022 is election day. Are we starting too late? Absolutely not. This is a perfectly reasonable time frame. If at any point in the process we conclude that a bond measure is not feasible and we need to defer till 2024 or a later date, we can certainly do that, but this would be kind of a month-by-month timeline if we decided to proceed. Last topic, and then I'll be available obviously for questions or anything else where I can be helpful, but I know the question has come up about bond refinancing and what does the market look like, and is there something that might be feasible for us today? So if you look at the next slide, high level, big picture, there certainly is an opportunity out there if we wanted to consider it. There's really three series of bonds that would save taxpayers money if they were to be refinanced. Some bonds from Measure AA, two series of bonds from Measure AA, and then a refunding bond that refinanced bonds of one of the previous elections. If you looked at the interest rate differential, it's about 1.5%, a little more than 1.5%. Those bonds carry an interest rate of 4.13%. If we're refinancing them today, it'd be about 2.5%. That would generate about $6 million in savings for taxpayers. Why do I put that NPV? What does that mean? So that stands for the net present value percentage, the value of that $6 million if we had it in hand today in today's dollars. There are a couple of standards out there for good government. One of them is if you can save at least 3% in net present value. There's another that's a little stricter. If you could save at least 5%, these are just unwritten guidelines. So at 9.2%, we would be well in excess of either the 3% or the 5% standard. Any savings number that certainly I would ever share with you is net of the transaction costs. And obviously, it's no extension of term of the old bonds. Now, one of the interesting things about Wiseburn Unified is the board over the years has established 4 goals or 4 parameters that you've said you would like to achieve in order to give the go-ahead for a refinancing. So I went through each of the 4 parameters. The first one, which is that the cost of issuance not exceed 1.5%, that's probably the easiest of all of your parameters to hit. My preliminary estimate is 0.9%. And I think given the size of the bonds that are out there available to be refinanced, that 1.5% is probably always going to be the easiest one for us to hit. The second one is that the total savings be at least $5 million. Today's market, we'd be at $6 million. So we've got some cushion where we fairly easily satisfy that. The next one, there's the next two, and I've given a little detail, are a little bit more challenging. So one of them is that the average single-family household save at least $300 over the course of the refinancing. And if you look at the bottom row and the green check mark, in today's market, we would hit that. We'd be at $307. And I thought I'd give you a little detail. How do we come up with that? So the total assessed valuation of Weisburn Unified is about $10 billion. Of that, about $2.2 billion is single-family household. That's 22.1%. 6 million is the savings in today's market. So what's 22.1% of that? About 1.3 million. There's 4,356 single-family households in the district. That's detached homes, townhomes, and condos. So when you do the math, we get to $307. But obviously it's close. We're just above $300, just to share that with you. The final parameter, and this is the last slide of my presentation, the one that's the most challenging is the top 10 taxpayers saving at least $3 million. And I think the reason it's challenging is this in 21-22, this is the top 10. And if you look at their share of the total, they're only 24.5% of the total. So even though we have $6 million in savings, when you do the math, their share is only 1.4, 1.5 million. Because they're only a quarter, we would really need about $12 million or so in savings to be able to hit that $3 million. So we're not there. That's the one that's the most challenging. It might have been the case in years past that the top 10 were higher as a share of the total, but I thought you'd find a little bit of the detail helpful. So today, 2 of the 4 we hit relatively easily. The cost of issuance one and the $5 million total. The $300 per household, we do meet, but it's close. And then we do fall short on the $3 million for the top 10. So I was going to stop there. Happy to answer any questions or cover any other pieces of information that might be helpful to the board. So Blake, maybe I'll turn it back over to you or to the board president. And again, I'm happy to be helpful in any way that I can for the board this evening.
Thank you, Tim. Board members, any comments or questions for Tim Carty?
I have a question. Tim, first off, thank you for the presentation and I think we can always use a recap. So thank you, even though we've been involved with several bond measures in the past. I do have a question with regards to the assessed valuation and the tax rate.
Sure.
So for clarification, if I understood it correctly, you mentioned here's the question, the $60 per $100,000 assessed valuation, is that for a school district or a unified school district? Because we've been passing bond measures over the course of many years, and we went from a K-8 school district to a unified school district. That's the first part of the question. Then I have a follow-up.
Sure. So let me address that question. So first of all, for a K-12 unified school district, it's $60, and I should have added, per election. So you get a new $60. For either an elementary district or a high school district, it's $30. And interestingly enough, for a community college district, it's $25, but it is per election. So hopefully that answers the question. So when we were a K-8, we would have operated under the $30 per election. Centinela Valley High has to operate under the $30 per election. But a K-12, it's $60 per election.
And you just answered my second question, because with all those bond measures, the 4 bond measures that we've had, if I were to add up the 4, they're over $60. But you just clarified that it's per election, so we're well within that parameter there. That's the question I had. Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions from board members?
The fourth parameter, the top 10 companies, somebody refresh my mind as to why that is relevant. Anybody? And I also want to make clear that when he spoke about the savings to the households, obviously the rest of the savings goes to the corporate taxpayers. So I just want to make sure that people understand where that gap is there. Yes.
Right.
I think our goal is simply to be a good neighbor, a good corporate citizen.
So question to maybe help address your question there, Israel, and maybe Tim, you can help us with this as well. I saw in the assessed valuation for the businesses for 2021, I believe there was the number, it went up like 1.7%. I'm sorry, that total assessed valuation only went up 1.7%. I believe, Israel, in the past, it had gone up at a much higher rate. So it may have had to do with assumptions that we were seeing in the past that led to that. I think
corporate value
5 million
has flattened, where households are still escalating tremendously.
And that's what I was going to ask him, if he saw any correlation there, because the answer is I'm not sure why that's such a delta.
Yeah, I think we saw in 21-22 fairly consistent around the state. The assessed valuation of residential property continued to grow at a very rapid rate. But a lot of corporate and business property, they proactively appealed. You know, you had 2020-21 and the effect of COVID on businesses. So then for 21-22, they went to the county and were able to get reductions. Just to give you an example, El Segundo Unified, their district-wide assessed valuation shrunk from last year to this year because Chevron, which is 30% of their tax base, had a big drop. In your case, I think the residential appreciation countered the business. So we still had that 1.77% growth. And not knowing the origin of the parameters, it could well be that years ago, there was more concentration maybe among your top 10, and that's gotten more dispersed over the years, and the top 10 now is only a quarter. So it could be the case that, you know, some of the large landowners, our landlord, for example, Continental Development, you know, that there's that group's share, Boeing, Mattel, some of those folks, their share was just larger, and it's gotten a little smaller over time. Just a guess.
Tim, a couple questions. The first one pertaining to refi. Excited to see these numbers. This has been the board's probably sick of me talking about this over the years about refinancing to help our community members. What, to Mr. Moore's point, I think the fourth criteria is probably the least important in that, and it seems like a green light on the other three. If we were to pursue that, what is the timeline?
Sure. So a refinancing generally from start to finish takes about 90 days. What happens in the 90 days? So usually once there's consensus in the district that we want to go forward, whether it's direction from the board, head nod from the board, direction from the superintendent. Legal documents get prepared, an offering statement for the bonds, a resolution for the board. The district's credit rating gets reaffirmed. The reason a refi takes a shorter amount of time than a new draw for projects is there's not the extra step of going to the LA County Board of Supervisors. A school district has the authority in Los Angeles County and in California to issue refinancing bonds on its own. So it's a fairly streamlined process. A new draw is more like 120 days because you have to go to the LA County Board of Supes. So, you know, from the time you can sort of say, let's go, to the interest rate locked, that's probably 75 days. And then there's about an extra 15 days for the closing papers on the back end. And then the taxpayers, so I would say anytime a refinancing in LA County is completed before the end of May, the taxpayers see the benefit on the upcoming year's tax bill.
Say we see that in November, effectively.
Well, LA County starts setting, yes, the bill that goes out in October, November, right. Because LA County, they start setting tax rates in June. So if you've got a refinancing in the books, let's say by May, that's available when they compute the tax rates in June. Then the bill goes out October, November. The taxpayers see the benefit.
So one final follow-up here. With the Fed potentially threatening a increase in interest rates, was that calculated into your calculation? Because they're projecting March at this point, at least that's what the pundits are saying, and 90 days or 75 days would obviously not make that threshold.
Great question. We did, when we ran these numbers, put in a little bit of a cushion. It's interesting what's happened in the first 2 weeks of 2022. So last week, there was a little bit of an uptick in rates, and we took that into account. The market stabilized this week, and actually rates came down a little bit today. A lot of the focus is on inflation, right? How real is it? How long is it going to last? Did it get overblown last year? The wholesale producer price index came out today, and it was a little lower than the market expected. So you never know, but we did put a little bit of a cushion in. We didn't really, take it to the razor's edge. So there's a little bit of room. If we started and rates did tick upward a little bit, we'd probably have to decide if that $300 per household is really hard and fast. I mean, if it was $290 or $280, would we still go forward? Something for the board to think about, because you can start and maybe lose a little ground, but it still meets the other parameters and you're interested in proceeding. So something maybe for the board to think about.
All right. So on this particular subject, Dr. Silvers, I would ask that we put in, I believe we couldn't do anything without an action item here. I'd ask we put this on our next agenda for consideration.
And I have a clarification as well, or a comment. So Tim, just to clarify, the 4 parameters that we've outlined, the 4th one being the one that is not met. I just want to clarify that should we go forward with a refinancing, the top 10 businesses or 10 taxpayers, there will not be any additional cost to them. They're just not going to save as much, correct?
100%. So the best way to think about it is the top 10, they'll get about a quarter of the savings.
Right.
Whatever the savings are, 5 million, 6 million, 7 million, they'll get a quarter of that based on their assessed valuation.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
All right, one other area. In fact, Nelson, do you have a question? I'll stop and let you chime in here if you'd like.
No, I just want to also thank Tim Carty for the wonderful presentation, the refresher. Like Roger said, we could always use that. So thank you. I understand that as part of our profession. So
sure.
So
thank you.
Thank you. Tim, it's incumbent upon us as a board to look into funding for our facilities and to keep our district in good health in many ways. Obviously, you presented a bond. A first question, are there other options available to us? And I don't know if you're prepared to answer that, but if you have a thought, that would be great. And the second question, and this is kind of a comment for the board and the community as a whole, is that this is not about raising money to raise money. We've done, if you'll remember, the LPL with LPL, a master facilities master plan that requires review, that suggests there are some significant needs for the district. Dr. Silvers, I don't know if you can comment here, or maybe it's a future meeting come back with, but Tim, you're telling us 124 million at effectively no additional cost to our community. That's very exciting to me that we're not, if we did pursue this, it's not adding additional cost to the community. My question for Dr. Silvers and our team here is, in reviewing the LPL master facilities plan to do what we need to do, what does 124 million buy us? Do we need that? Do we need a lot more? I don't remember top of my head. So that's something I'd ask us to get back on. And then back to the first question, are there any options, Tim, beyond the bond that we have for these, to raise these funds?
Sure, that's a great question. I mean, in working with a lot of school districts, I think generally I view it as a three-legged stool. So almost, every district at some point needs to have a bond as a component. But another component can be state matching funds.
Oh.
Now, of course, you need your own funds. That's why passing a bond is a key. But, there's talk of another state bond measure, except for this last one. The state routinely passed these state school facility bond measures. So that's one. And then you get, and Blake or Dave would know better than I, specific to Wiseburn Unified, but you do get some money through developer fees. New development, whether it's new construction, whether it's tear down and rebuild. So there's always some component of that. And those are usually the three legs of the stool: state school matching funds, local bond, new development paying whatever comes in developer fees.
So you raise a really good point. Thank you for the reminder. And this is my last question, guys. The governor has effectively stated we will be providing pre-K, and Dr. Silvers is a 2024-25 or 25-26. We will need facility for that. This is mandated of us. If we don't add facility, we'll have to take it away from facility now. This is not a question, it's a reality. So my question is, if we did not pass a bond, would we be eligible for matching funds that the state would likely provide? Is that a requirement to have bond funds available to get access to matching funds to save 50 cents on the dollar or et cetera? Did I lose you, Tim?
No. I'm sorry. Yes, I think I either Blake or Dave would know better than I about the funding on the pre-K. But I think that the way the state formula normally works, so every time there's a state school building bond, then the state comes up with the rules for how school districts can access it. But I think almost universally, you either have to have tried a bond, passed a bond, or passed enough bonds so that you hit a certain percentage. I think in one case, there was something like, you have to be at 30% of your bonding capacity or something. So I think it's almost always, the name of the game, that you have some funds of your own to obtain state match. The other thing I would say is, the 124 million, it'll be interesting to see what kind of polling results we get back. I mean, if the community was willing to support not only that $30, but a little more, then maybe that $124 million becomes a bigger number. So, I think my understanding of the way state school building matching funds have always worked in recent times is, even for a new program like the pre-K, the state wants to incentivize local school districts to pass their local bonds. That's for sure. And you don't want LAUSD and San Diego Unified and Oakland Unified and, these big districts to pick up all the money. So one of the ways a medium-sized district like Wiseburn Unified can get a seat at the table, I think, is a local bond.
Dr. Silvers or Dave, do you have any questions, comments, corrections of anything I said? Please chime in.
No, I think that Tim answered that question, Neil. I think that you were just asking the question as to whether or not a passing of a bond was pretty much necessary in order to get state matching funds, which I think he answered.
Right.
And Dr. Goldman, I would just add, yes, we do collect developer fees. Over the last, 3 to 5 years on average, we're collecting about 50 to 60K per year. So, in a state match, that wouldn't go very far.
Right.
Neil, I have a quick comment to add here. So LPA Architects a few years ago developed the facilities master plan with a committee that was developed by the board that certainly helped us obtain input in the development of that master plan. I think we are looking to possibly have an update to that facilities master plan to consider some of the things that we just discussed, the preschool requirements and so forth. So I think that's something that's going to take place here soon. I think along the comments that have been discussed here with regards to the bond and matching funds, I did want to share that one of the things that's taking place right now is the state of California is considering a K-12 education facilities bond this November 8th, 2022. and that's for about $12 billion statewide. And I bring that up because it goes to the point that you're just bringing up. There is an opportunity, as Tim just mentioned, for local school districts to basically have some matching funds. So I did want to make that comment.
One question. I'd like an understanding or an email with more information as to if we pass the bond in 22, how does it work that the community doesn't pay till 25? How does that play out? I'd like to see that in paper, the interest, the numbers, and see what effect that has.
Right. And maybe if it's helpful, I could just give a quick answer and then I could follow up. But essentially, when you issue bonds, you can, on a very straightforward basis, you can pre-fund the first 3 years worth of interest. So if we issued bonds, let's say in 2023, we could pre-fund 23, 24, 24, 25, and 25, 26. You'd pre-fund the interest from out of the bond. And then the first time the community would be obligated to pay a tax is 26, 27, which would be the year after that second Measure E has dropped off. But I could certainly give a more detailed, and I could show you a little chart.
Okay,
But
yeah, I like the details. Like they say, the devil's in the details, right?
Yeah, the devil's in the details, and it does not involve any of those capital appreciation bonds or anything. So we're not talking about any, unusual financial technique. But I can certainly, Blake, provide maybe a little chart and a brief email for the board members that would help make that clear.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Comments or questions? Anyone else?
Just one more comment, more for the community. If you modernize school facilities, you're eligible up to 60% state matching funds. And if you construct a new building, you're eligible up to 50%. Is that correct, Roger? I want to make sure that I'm sharing correct information there.
I'd have to verify those numbers.
It
sounds right to me, though.
Yeah, you're eligible. You're eligible up to that. And Tim, is that correct?
I think that's correct.
Okay.
I think, the state doesn't pay 100%.
All right.
But I have heard the 50-50 and I have heard the 60-40.
Okay.
Sure.
I think that would be. Let's not. This is a board meeting. I don't want to say anything that's not factual. So we'll certainly come back and make sure that's well documented and important information to share with the community down the road.
Right.
Just as a clarification there, Nelson, the reason I hesitated on that is because, as Tim Cardy mentioned earlier, with every statewide school bond measure, the state determines the new rules of the road.
Yeah.
So that could change, but traditionally, you're absolutely correct. That is what they do. In a future bond, I don't know, because it would depend on what they choose to do and how to fund it.
Yeah. And I just think that's an important piece, an important message, ultimately, that we do have to share with the community at some point if this is a consideration.
Yeah, right. Sure.
All right. We do have an item on our agenda that we'll come to later that is not pro or con, yes or no on a bond. It's the exploration thereof. So, Tim, very insightful, very helpful. Thank you very much. We appreciate your advice and your help in this process. Thank you.
My pleasure. Glad to have been helpful. Have a great rest of the meeting, everyone. And then Blake, I'll follow up with you and anything you need in the next day or two, whatever I can do to be helpful.
Thanks, Tim.
Pleasure. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night.
Okay.
Let's now move to district updates. 4.1, the WSD school renaming update. I believe we're going to bring on Dr. Ingram to help us out here. Is that correct, Dr. Silvers?
That is correct. I think Dr. Ingram and we'll sort of tag team this and give a little bit of an update. She's not on screen. Dr. Ingram, come. She's on, right? She's on. Wendy, she's in the participant group.
She's here, yeah.
Okay.
There she is. She's coming over.
Do not panic, Blake.
Hello.
Hey, Dr. Ingram.
Dr. Ingram.
Hello.
Good to see you all. I'm going to share my screen. And All right. Dr. Sivers, do you want to start us off?
Yeah, I'll start off. I just, this is a pretty, we've come to use this presentation quite a bit, really wanting to give the board updates, current updates as it relates to information regarding the school renaming process. I think last meeting, both Monique and Erica gave a pretty solid presentation about how much information is out there for the community to absorb, to access via, our websites and our listservs and so forth. And also wanting to make sure that the board has that same information on a regular basis. So today is our January 13th update based on our survey, which I believe after today will close. So this is it, and we'll move on sort of to the next phase, but we can just go ahead to the next slide. So we, again, just reiterating sort of the decision-making process, I wanted to answer 3 questions. What has already been determined, and this board has taken action, again, to rename 138th Street School, formerly known as Peter Burnett, still officially known as Peter Burnett, but in the process there of needing to rename that school. Also, we were directed to explore whether or not Anza, Cabrillo, and Dana would be renamed, and also to seek student engagement. What was yet to be determined was the name for 138th Street, or the new Peter Burnett. And also the type of name, and that's come up quite a bit, is, as we move forward, how are we going to name our schools? There's a couple options out there for us in our board policy. One would be a person of local stature, somebody who's made significant contributions locally. Another would be a person who's made contributions to the greater good of the world, if you will. And then you could have a regional choice, boundary, a landmark, something like that, street name, etc. But the type of name for any additional Wiseburn school that might be renamed is yet to be determined. So we don't know that. That would be phase 2, if you will, of a renaming process. Should we take it to that next step? But who makes the decisions? Ultimately, the final decision comes down to the Wiseburn Board of Trustees. Those of you that sit before us today. We try and provide as much information for you as possible, but the decision is informed by the Citizens Advisory Committee and also the greater Wiseburn community and staff. That would include our students, and we've done that through Citizens Advisory Committee meetings, trying to provide the board as much as possible. And we're going to get into the latest and greatest data as we move forward. So go ahead, Monique.
Okay. So to start off, we want to remind the board that in December, the Citizens Advisory Committee members were provided with a survey with the same questions that our community survey has on it. And so this is just a repeat or a review of that data that was presented. So we can see that for Cabrillo, 71% of our committee members believe that Cabrillo's does not align with Wiseburn's assurances. 75% of our committee members recommended that Cabrillo's name be changed, the school name for Cabrillo to be changed, and 11% were not sure or had no opinion. And we can see across the schools for Anza and Dana that there's a similar pattern there. All right, so you might remember that we were trying a lot of recruitment efforts, taking suggestions in, and they seem to be helpful. We have 263 survey participants that are included in our data review today. And this was up from 198 responses that we had in December, which was also an increase from the 122 responses that we had in November. You see there's a breakdown of the types of role or affiliation that participants can identify. I'm going to go to the next slide because there's a visual representation there. It's a little easier to see what's going on. So you can see here that the largest percentage of our participants are parents or caregivers of currently enrolled students. Next, we have a large portion of community members who participated, and then also current students, Wiseburn employees, and then parents and caregivers of formerly enrolled students. All right. And so our next slide shows how that demographic has changed across time. So here in the top left is the chart that we were just looking at, the January responses and how people identify in their roles, compared to this pie chart on the right, where it's the same representation but from December. And then at the bottom here, we have the November pie chart. We can see that our blue piece here has grown over time. So in November, this is our parents and caregivers of currently enrolled students. We had about 28.5% of the survey participants who identified with that category. In December, it was 35.4%, and then January up again to 40.3%. The yellow section here we can see has grown as well. These are our current students. Was 0.8% in November, 6.1% in December, and then 7.6% as we review the data now in January. Then the orange section up here represents our parents and caregivers of formerly enrolled students. We can see that there's been some growth in that section as well. All right, so of our 263 participants, 114 of them had an opportunity to answer a question that we added late to the survey, which was how they found out about the survey or how they learned about it. We can see that the most common way was by a flyer that was sent home with students, and then word of mouth, district and school site newsletters, Wiseburn social media, and also our renaming committee members also were helpful in recruiting participants for our survey. All right, so with that, before we get into the review of the data, we also wanted to talk a little bit about our analytics. In December, we shared that the renaming portal had been visited about 1,200 times. There have been a couple hundred more visits since then, so we're at about 1,500 now. We saw an increase right after we sent the flyers home with students so that their parents could review that and learn about the renaming committee process. On that flyer was a QR code that would directly take parents to our renaming portal, and that QR code was scanned 170 times. You might also remember that there is a toolkit that we created for our committee members, and that has been viewed about a dozen more times since the last time we provided an update to the board in December. And so with that, from the board updates and also our conversations with our committee members, we're constantly talking about how do we help ensure that those who are filling out the survey are informed. And an example of that is Dr. Ethington's presentation. We were seeing that of the 53-minute recording, on average about 12 to 13 minutes of that were actually watched. And so one suggestion was to shorten the video to provide community members with a summary of that. And the average duration of view time for that was 1 minute and 45 seconds. So we're seeing that kind of regardless of what we put out there, how long it is, still only a portion of that is being viewed by our community members. All right, and so just a reminder, the questions that were on the survey asked participants for each school site if they, the extent to which they agree or disagree that a namesake aligns with Wiseburn's assurances, and then also whether or not the participant recommends that each school site be used. All right, so here is some of our data. This slide obviously has 4 things that we're looking at here. In blue, we have the December committee member survey results. So this is the data that we just saw a few slides ago. In the red, the yellow, and the green, we have community survey responses across time. And so we can see here, for example, with Cabrillo, that 7% of our committee members do not think that that namesake aligns with our assurances. We can compare that to about 47% of our community members from our January data review who do not think that the namesake aligns, which there's a slight difference there between what we saw in December and November. And we can see that across schools, there's kind of the same trend there that over time, for this, the more time that's gone by or the more participants that have engaged in the survey, we see a decrease in the number of community members who are believing that our namesakes are aligning with our assurances. All right, so next, the colors and the pairings are the same. So in blue, we have our committee members' survey results from December, and then the community's responses across time. And we see in terms of recommending a name change, 75% of our committee members recommend to rename Cabrillo, compared to 38% of our community members. And for Cabrillo, that number is kind of stayed pretty much the same across time. Compared to Anza and Dana, where our committee members, the majority of them recommend a name change, then about 29% for Dana are recommending a name change, and that number for Anza and Dana have increased. We've seen an increase across the months where we've been collecting data. And one final slide. There were some participants who shared that they're not sure or have no opinion about the name change. Those numbers have been pretty consistent across time from our community members as well. And so I think just a couple of things to note, like typically with a survey, once it's distributed, you get the biggest response immediately, right? The more time that goes by, there's typically fewer participants who respond. And I think it's interesting here, one of the reasons why we might continue to see these waves of participation could be for a couple of reasons. One, maybe as we continue to talk about it, more people become motivated and interested in the process and engaging in that process. Or maybe it's because we continue to identify different recruitment methods. Maybe people who didn't know about the survey weeks ago are learning about it and responding when they see it. And let's see, I think that's all of the points that I wanted to make. Oh, there was one more. So there was a difference in our assurances so we see this kind of slant. And one thing that we changed from this time to the last time was based on the recommendation, we added a description of each assurance on the actual survey. And so it's possible that because that information was there in the survey right before people read the question, that we might be seeing this difference as well. Okay, and Dr. Silvers, back to you.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Ingram. So just moving forward, and we shared this at the last board meeting, is that we do have a board resolution that we'll read as a first reading today. We did have public comment, public hearing today. We will also do the same on the 25th, bring that resolution back for a second reading, and then actually put it on as an action item on the 25th, unless there's direction from the board not to do that at this point. But we are targeting that 125 board meeting as the date to do our second reading, also accompany that with a public hearing and then take action. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Ingham. Thank you, Dr. Silvers. Board questions or comments for our presenters?
No question. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a question. What I would like to see, Dr. Ingram, is I would like to see the breakout. I don't need a trended one, just the overall results of the two questions. Really, the second question, should we change or should we not change, by each segment. I'd like to know what the parents said. I'd like to know what the community said. I'd like to know what the staff said, and just have that as an added perspective here, if that's available.
Sure, absolutely. So we have it for the two previous updates, and I'll make sure you get that for this round as well.
Appreciate that. All right. Well, thank you for the presentation. Thank you for the work and the efforts to try and reach out to the community and get this input so we are informed and can make a wise decision. Let's move to 4.2, the Recreation and Community Committee with a focus on baseball and softball. Thank you, Nelson, for your involvement on this committee, and Dr. Silvers, to you, please.
You know, I think Nelson, Mr. Martinez, I don't know if you want to comment. You were very integral in yesterday's meeting and really providing some historical background and also just, you know, your own experience with Little League. So I certainly can tag on, but wanted to give you an opportunity to share too. You want to start?
Sure. So we had a meeting yesterday with Wiseburn Little League, Aviation Little League, and also Da Vinci as well, athletics. So the new athletic director was in the meeting, as also CEO Matt Wender was in the meeting as well. And really the conversation revolved around field usage. We have limited field usage for athletic programs, especially at the high school. So we brought both Little Leagues and Da Vinci together to really work out that field usage. I think with our current fields, we've come up with a plan. They're going to detail out those plans. And one of the things that we talked about in that meeting is once they come up with the plan, and everyone was very amenable, and I think we're going to work something out where everybody will have an opportunity to use the fields for their sports programs. Particularly what I'm talking about is baseball and softball, by the way. Those are the challenging programs right now to find fields for. But I think we've come up with a good plan where the softball program will be able to utilize our Dana fields for home games in the future, and they will be able to utilize our Aviation Little League. And so, and then also Wiseburn Little League is also has volunteered to help out in whatever way they need as well for any other field usage. So I think we have a plan. I think what is going to happen is we will ultimately formalize this, and it'll be advertised on the Da Vinci Athletics website and also on Wiseburn and Aviation Little League website, so that there's clarity in terms of what fields are being used, at what time, and so forth. One of the reasons that this has also been challenging is that we've lost the opportunity recently, and I'll let Blake discuss that. And I think this is a perfect segue for him. I know he's working on it. Is we've lost the ability to use the LA County field, and that's why this has presented a significant challenge. And that's why we had that meeting yesterday to try to work this out among the community and the high school. Overall, I appreciate everybody's support there. It was Manny, president of Aviation Little League. It was Rob, president of Wiseburn Little League, and obviously CEO Matt Wonder and the athletic director DR. All I really, and obviously Dr. Silvers, I really appreciate everyone's just cooperation on this. It's a tough time, but we all, I think, worked it out. And we got a game plan at least for this year, and then we'll certainly have to circle back and try to address this in a more long-term fashion. So I think it's appropriate to say that based upon the recent discussion that we had with regards to the bond, that there is a need for fields here in our community. With that, I'll turn it over to Blake.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. I think that, first and foremost, I thought that the tenor and the cooperation, collaboration at the meeting was really noteworthy. Just everybody wanting to try and find space and field time and field space for kids, whatever age, understanding that we have high school programs that are becoming larger and need more space. Understanding that we also have a very robust Little League program. We're seeing more kids involved in Little League, which we love to see, want to see kids out there and be active. So it's just really, really nice. And then you just had a group of people that wanted to problem solve. And so when you get that in a room, it really makes things go forward. So I agree with Nelson that at the end of the day, there is some we do have some sort of marching orders for the leagues to communicate and to provide a plan for us so that we then can take control and be able to parse out the different field options that are there and that we identified, including identifying ANZA, although it's a turf field, but potentially utilizing that for some of our smaller kids, you know, where maybe a couple of T-ball teams can practice. There's lights and just things that we may not have thought of before, may not have had to utilize in the past. Now we could potentially do that as well. So definitely good problem solving. And the second part of it, the not so fun part is dealing, I shouldn't say that. I'm going to retract that statement a little bit. I'm going to say the more challenging part is working with the county because, you know, we have been utilizing the county field, which is really the deal breaker in this. If we had that use of that county field, it would be much easier for Da Vinci schools to utilize that space and then also allow more time for aviation. You know, unfortunately, not only has the county caused or basically is charging Da Vinci schools, their softball program, something around $70. I'm just going to throw out a number that I've heard, $70 an hour. So figure $140 for one day of practice. It's just cost prohibitive and really, I think, unnecessary, considering the fact that we also provide a gym and a tennis facility there for the county. And so, you know, in the interest of partnership, I have reached out, actually received 3 emails today back from Supervisor Mitchell's office. I have to say they've been extremely supportive. I want to say Ara An has been extremely helpful in this process and has really promised and wanted me to share with the board that she is bringing it to sort of the next level. And I should be hearing something in the next day or so. So I did ask that we would be able to use that field at the county free of charge for Da Vinci schools, and also questioning why we would be unable to utilize our gym. There is a little bit of a need for Da Vinci schools to utilize a gym space for the basketball program. Not on a regular basis, I don't think, but definitely maybe as a pop-in. But due to some COVID issues, the county is not allowing that use. It just seems strange that we own a facility that we can't use. So, you know, we're going to work through those in the next couple of days, I'm hoping. And but I do want to share with the board that the supervisor's office has been extremely helpful and definitely looking forward to some good news here in the next couple of days. And that's it.
Well, thank you both. And I'm sure, of course, you've reminded them that there's negotiations upcoming. So really appreciate their cooperation and understanding that there's some options here for us.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Let's continue now to information. And from the board, out of deference to you, Mr. Mora, we'll start with you if you'd like to add anything else tonight.
No, I have nothing else. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Banuelos.
Thank you, Neil. One comment, I would like to just ask that we take a look, Dr. Silvers, if we can please take a look at coordination with Weisburn and Da Vinci as it relates to the use of Schoolmint. Right now, when students we're both using Schoolmint, but there seems to be confusion in our community as to which Schoolmint students that are transitioning from Dana, you know, from the 8th grade over to Da Vinci, which version are they supposed to be using? Because I think a lot of parents are trying to log in and register their students through the Schoolmint that they've been using since kindergarten, which is on the Weisburn side of the house, if you will. I know we're together, so when I say Weisburn, it's only to differentiate the 2 Schoolmints. When they say Weisburn, Da Vinci, they're utilizing the Weisburn Schoolmint because it's the same name. That's the challenge with it, right? They're utilizing that to try to register and enroll students for attending high school on the Da Vinci side because it's also called Schoolmint. Is there something here that we can do with Schoolmint to either integrate those 2 systems, allow a link to as another option so that they can talk to each other to facilitate that portion? Because I think some parents are also kind of waiting for an initiation email to come from the Weisburn Schoolmint. Well, it's not coming because they're going to be going to the high school side, and that should be from the Da Vinci Schoolmint. So we can just take a look at it. I don't have a full solution for that. I want to just highlight that it's a coordination issue that we should, I'd like for us to take a look at and facilitate that for parents as they're enrolling their students now into Da Vinci schools.
Eileen, do you have any, I know you're the guru at Schoolmint. Do you have any input?
No, thank you, Mr. Banuelos, for that. We will look into it. I know it's a matter of working with the company on this one, so we'll get to it.
Great, thank you. And that's all I have, Dr. Goldman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Banuelos. Mr. Martinez.
Just one comment, and it really goes to the point that Israel brought up early in his opening remarks. I just want to thank staff. I want to thank the cabinet, administration, staff, the teachers again for a wonderful return to school. I know it's been challenging again as we seen this pandemic surge after the holidays. I know that these are challenging times, and I just certainly appreciate the teachers' adjustment, flexibility, and just everything that you're doing. We recognize we know these are tough times for everybody. So again, just thank you. I think Israel covered it really well in his opening remarks. That's all I have, Neil.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez. I echo the same. It just challenging times. You have all stepped up. God bless you all. Thank you so much. Dr. Silvers, relative to Mr. Mora's retirement, we're going to call it, we are now in the position of needing to appoint a board member. So I would ask, I don't know how long this takes, but I would challenge you, if I may, to get something up by Monday. Because, and community members, if you're out there listening, we are in need of a new board member post Mr. Moore's retirement. As such, as soon as it's available, and Dr. Silvers, you can talk to this, we will put the application, I assume, on the website. We encourage you to do that. We will probably go back to our processes in the past of interviews and such. But at the very least, ask if you're interested, please get your name in the hat. We want as many as we can have of you interested to do best by our community. Anything to add there at this moment, Dr. Silvers?
No, I think that, I'll definitely craft out a plan and want to post. And I know we have some legal obligations that we have to meet in terms of putting advertisements in the Daily Breeze and or a local newspaper. So we'll have to check some boxes. I do have checklists for these things. I'll just go through that checklist, and I'll try and make your deadline of Monday, Dr. Goldman.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Want to move quickly here.
Yeah.
Moving on, Mr. Wilson, in your presentation, if you remember this, and I'm impressed that you got developer fees right at your access, so thank you. What we earn in that every year. There was comments about the name change cost. If we were to pursue this, I think you've given us some other numbers, and I think you've vetted them pretty carefully. I'd like to if you could review those in your time. I won't stop now. If you would, that'd be great. I do want to mention that we were to be having, and to reminder to all of us, we were going to have a joint board meeting with the Vinci board. I had a actually very positive, good conversation with Dr. Brand, the president of their board, and we jointly decided that due to COVID, it was scheduled for January 4th, the day we were opening schools, the day before, and we thought to do it either that week or the next week when Da Vinci was opening schools. We all agreed, and board agreed, I believe, that it was appropriate to reschedule that. I have a meeting scheduled with him to revisit that now that we've kind of gotten through the opening. We're not through COVID yet, of course, but to revisit that and hopefully get that going. This is not a lack of interest by anybody. I think we're all eager to get this on the table, but we have to do it judiciously and respectfully, keeping everybody safe. So just FYI for everybody. Finally, a thank you to Ann Tittle and Rebecca Hamburg for their leadership, and the entire WEF board. Got a chance to review kind of with them. They are proceeding ahead, even in these times, planning for a rock around the block this year with some exciting new things. So keep that in your mind. And thank you for the leadership there and the good work you're doing. So let's now turn to the cabinet, and Mr. Wilson, our chief business official, we will turn to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Goldman. As we mentioned developer fees earlier in the agenda, I did want to mention that we have contracted with Keen Consulting to prepare a developer fee justification study. I believe it's currently almost finished drafted in its draft form. They're just waiting for the state allocation board, which is scheduled for next Thursday, January 20th. The state allocation board sets the rates. And so once those rates are set, they'll include that in their fees, their study, and then we'll present it to the board. So that should be coming mid-February, I'm hoping, and I'll follow up with the consultant tomorrow to make sure we're still on track for that deadline.
Thank you.
On Monday, this past Monday, January 10th, Governor Newsom released his initial budget proposal for next fiscal year, 22-23. It's a $286 billion spending plan. Some of the highlights for education for Prop 98, and this is TK through 14. He proposes $102 billion in expenses. And this is about $8.2 billion more than the current year budget. So a lot of money being invested into K through 14 education. In that, it includes $3.3 billion for an increase to the local control funding formula. That's our main funding source for school districts. Originally, it was a 2.85%. I'm sorry, originally it was a 2.48 cost of living adjustment for next year. That's been re-benchmarked, and that's now proposed at 5.33%, which would be great. There's also some proposals about how school districts are funded. Right now, school districts are funded on average daily attendance to be funded on the highest of the current year, ADA, average daily attendance, or the prior year, whichever is higher. But because school districts have had, unfortunately, a lot of absences in the last couple of years, they're looking at maybe doing a 3-year rolling average and being funded on either the current year, the 3-year average, or the immediate prior year. So we'll see where that goes. There's a lot of support behind that as school districts are facing kind of what they call the ADA cliff because of COVID. It also he also proposed to make a deposit into the state's rainy day fund. By the end of 22-23, it's projected to have a $9.7 billion fund balance. And what that does is that puts a cap on school district reserves. The school district reserves cannot exceed 10%. However, we're exempt because we have less than 2,500 ADA. So we would be exempt from that 10% cap on our reserves. He's also proposing an additional $500 million to be invested into special education funding, which would be great. We would welcome that. And there's also a proposal to fund $2.25 billion for new construction and modernization through the school facilities program. So that would also free up some money for modernization and new school facilities. Again, these are just the initial proposals for next year. There's a lot of negotiations that happen at the state level, but we'll continue to monitor it. Next, I believe Friday, some of cabinet members, some of WFA, CSEA, I believe, will be attending, and I think a couple board members were invited, will be attending virtually School Services of California, their budget workshop for next year, and we'll bring the board back any updates. And again, we'll continue to follow the proposal as it makes its way through legislation. Just a construction update on the Old Dana demo. Today, they were supposed to go out and spray the dust mitigation. Got delayed because of the rain. It was supposed to happen back in early December, but because of the rain, I'm sorry, mid-December, but because of the rain, it got pushed back. And they're also supposed to, I think they did it today, more of the permanent fencing where it's cored into the ground. I didn't have a chance to drive by, but I will drive by tomorrow and make sure that those are completed. And some good news on the total cost of the project. So we had 3 contractors. We had a demo and abatement contractor, an electric contractor, and a plumbing contractor. And we had $210,000 built into those 3 contracts total for allowances or cost overages. We've only spent $45,000 on the demo, and that was for 8 additional days of abatement work. And then on the plumbing, we only spent about $3,500 to rework a gas line to the SLC building. So in all of the $210,000 allowances we had built into the contracts, we've only spent 48.5. So they're going to not return, but we won't be billed for the 161,500, and only about 23% of that $210,000 was used. So that's really successful with all the unknowns of that project. So we're glad that's going to happen. Originally, the cost of the project, or the cost of the district, the board entered into, was just over $1.76 million. And with those cost allowances being returned, it's now at $1,596,000. So great news on that. We're very happy and ready to just button that project up and move along. And that's all I have.
Fantastic. Any comments on the costs of renaming? If you know, if you remember, if you don't remember, it's fine.
I do remember. So when 138th originally we started looking at the cost of the marquees and just miscellaneous signage, it was estimated between 10 and 15K, and that's just for signs and marquees. To change that, so anywhere from 10 to 15K per school site. Now with inflation, this was maybe a year ago. With inflation, it could be 20K. But that doesn't include letterhead or shirts or any other miscellaneous things that maybe the school site or PTA would fund. These are just really marquees and signage. Anywhere between 15 and 20K per school site is a safe assumption for right now.
Beyond that 80,000, are there any material costs?
Not just time and working with the California Department of Education to update the name of the schools in database. That was not me.
We were rocking out about those numbers, I guess. So there you go. All right. All right. Thank you very much, Dave. Appreciate that report, and thanks for staying on all of that. The governor's information. That's obviously incredibly important to us. Director of Psychology Services, Ms. Mazzarelli, you mentioned you have comments throughout the program later, so we'll allow you to take a pass right now. And let's now go to our Assistant Super of HR, and who I like to now call our COVID czar, Dr. Dougal.
COVID czar. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for the new title, Dr. Goldman. Appreciate it. It has definitely been quite a busy few days as we came back from school. I want to first thank the teachers and school site staff, our health clerks, secretaries, general clerks, our admin, instructional aides, custodians, everyone that has really done the boots on the ground, difficult work at our school sites, from answering phone calls to getting questions to testing students, cleaning and sanitizing our classrooms. So my thanks to all of you that have helped as we navigate these challenging times. For our parents, we appreciate your understanding and your patience as we get new guidelines. As of yesterday, we had new guidelines from Department of Public Health. And that was yesterday morning. And then last night, the California Department of Public Health released even more guidelines. And so we are still reviewing those and waiting for our county Department of Public Health to get back to us on how that may change any of our protocols and processes. And so once again, I appreciate everyone's understanding as we, things change from 10 days to 5 days to viral tests to PCR tests to who needs to quarantine and is it masked contact or unmasked contact. So there's a lot of if-then flow charts I have going. And so each case is unique, and we are taking our time to personalize our approach to, when we do call parents or when we email them. So thanks. I do also want to let folks know that we do have a Cova Dashboard. It is on our website, and we try to update it at least twice weekly. But I do want to let you know that, the numbers change consistently, hourly sometimes. And so at this point right now, before the board meeting started, we had 109 active cases throughout our district. That includes both students and staff. And once again, that number changes daily because students are coming back from isolation. And so that it's not they don't change just once a week, but they change daily. Along with the active COVID cases, just so everyone's aware, we also have students quarantining. Remember, quarantining are students that had exposure during lunch or in the classroom. And so we are averaging about 500 to 550 student absences per day, which is about 20 to 23% of our student population. And so knowing that, just once again, we have teachers ensuring that our students have instructional work to do while they're in quarantine or isolation. And then we're also managing students as they come back on campus with tests or with viral testing. Also want to let folks know that we have increased our testing capacity. We are prioritizing students that have symptoms and staff, prioritizing students and staff that have had contact or exposure to a positive case. And so it's not something that we're just testing every student or staff member every day. It is a priority kind of allotment of testing. All of our health offices do have rapid antigen tests, and so they can detect a current active infectious COVID person. So we are using those as one part of our testing mechanism. The other piece is our testing with Fulgent. I'm happy to report in the next week or two, and we'll let everyone know when this happens, as we are expanding our testing capacity with Fulgent to 4 days a week instead of 2 days a week. So we will be testing Monday through Thursday. But once again, they are just making sure they have enough staff to, they've agreed to it. They just need about 2 weeks to get staff going at each of those sites. And so once again, we will be extending our testing to Monday through Thursday. We appreciate that we are able to test our students and our staff without long wait times. And so parents, please bring your students, staff, please come on down to Dana on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and at Anzon Cabrillo, on alternating Tuesdays and Thursdays. So that is the COVID update. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it is a changing environment every day. Thank you all for patience, and thanks for figuring this out, Dr. Dougal and Dr. Silvers. Dr. Harbeck, our Assistant Sup of Educational Services, you have some data for us, I think. You're on mute.
I was so ready. Thank you, Dr. Goldman. We are here tonight to share with you a mid-year glance at student assessment data. I want to preface this, and we're going to have Ms. Nitsos come over. She is our coordinator for testing, all things assessment and all things data. She's going to come over and present to you, but I want to preface this by saying that we're really proud of the fact that we've been able to maintain a system of assessment, of consistent assessment across the district this year and last year through some great effort on the part of our teachers. And we use this data consistently to look at not just a group or a school or a district and where we are with numbers, but really as a tool for feedback as we personalize instruction for our students. So what you'll see tonight really is just a glance, and it goes much deeper, and our teachers, of course, have full access to all this data on behalf of their students. So I'm going to go ahead and share a couple of slides with you. And Sarah, thank you for being here. And we'll just go ahead. So tonight we're going to go ahead with a mid-year student achievement data review.
Good evening, school board members and members of the cabinet. Thank you for having me this evening. We have multiple ways where we gather data from assessments of our students. We have grade level and classroom assessments. We have the LPAC, state mandated testing, including CASP. It's been a little bit since we've done a CASP. We've not actually had a full CASP session since 2018-19. So this year will be the first year after a 2-year break. We'll be doing the CAST, the science assessment arm of that, as well as the physical fitness assessment. We have our annual screening of the GATE testing for our 3rd grade students. We also gather social emotional data using the California Healthy Kids Survey for our 5th and 7th graders. And tonight, our focus will be on our district benchmark, Renaissance STAR assessments for both reading and mathematics. In Wiseburn, for our 2nd through 8th graders, we have the reading and math assessment. Our kinder and 1st graders use the early foundational skills test, really seeing how their readiness for reading is. It is a computer adaptive assessment. It does use multiple choice, but it really gives us a guideline. It allows us to see their general achievement. It helps us plan instructional support in various activities. It allows teachers to track progress towards academic goals, and it estimates their proficiency on our upcoming state assessment. On the screen, you will see data from 2016 to 2020. It really is impactful when you're able to look at the trajectory of data over multiple years. And with our relationship with Renaissance, we can see here a long stretch of data. This is data before distance learning occurred in Wiseburn. We started at 61% of our students meeting and exceeding our standards and continued to grow from there. Now you can see where we are now. As of November, 63% of our students are still meeting and exceeding the reading standards. We see a little dip in September We expected that, we planned for that. The teaching staff was ready to hit the ground running. Let's look at how that appears in math. We started our journey with math just in the beginning of 2021. This was indicative of our distance learning. We had a different setting for assessment. And you can see now in November, we were at 49%. We dipped a little in September. In November, we're at 45% of our students meeting and exceeding standards. You'll notice that we're missing 6th through 8th grade on the previous slide. That's because 6th through 8th grade joined the Renaissance platform in June, when with the board's permission, we moved forward with using STAR as our local indicator instead of pushing forward with the CASP last year. You'll see 37% of the students meeting and exceeding in June, and we've now grown to 39% of our students meeting and exceeding. Again, you'll see that dip in September, that was expected, and we're coming back strong. Our data is tracking upwards, and we look forward to that growth improving. Renaissance offers a host of different ways teachers can access this data. This is an example of a screening report. It allows the teachers to see how their students spread out across the different performance bands. It allows them to make groups. It allows them to drill down to individual students and see exactly what skills each child might need, or a small group of children, or the class as a whole. They can see standards-based information as well as individual skills. All of this is ready within minutes of an entire class finishing the assessment. Much quicker turnaround than the CASP. To finish, I'd like to thank all the school board members and the cabinet for listening to yet another slide presentation with graphs in it. And I'd like to thank Israel Mora for his years of service.
Thank you, Sarah. I just want to thank you so much. That was really wonderful. Thank you. One of the things that we look forward to is the rest of the year, we have a few more benchmark windows. They're tied to our grading periods. So we tie up to that. We also have CASP coming at the end of the year. So we'll get back on track with that. We have a lot of good data. One of the nice things about STAR is it does give us a window to the future. We can look at it and see if our children are on track with each of the standards that are being taught. And I will say, with the good work that's going on in the classrooms, our students have such multiple entryways to learning, between the online venues, the classroom instruction, the strategies that are going on, real personalization of learning going on, from TK all the way up with Writer's Workshop that uses mentor text for students in reading, and our cognitively guided instruction strategies, and what they're doing at the middle school too is outstanding. So I just want to say, a lot of us had worries about a dip this year, about learning regression, and we're just seeing that our kids are climbing very fast, that we're starting to see that movement up. So we're looking forward to coming back at the end of the year again. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Harbeck. Just a quick couple takeaways from that was impressive that we're maintaining, especially the language arts scores are impressive. Obviously, the math scores are less so. And I believe we're working on strategies to address this, correct?
We are. It's a commitment from our district, and we also know that it's an ongoing commitment across our state. So we feel that Weisburn stands out, as a group that is always focused on the future. We do have an emphasis on math and writing this year, so I think you'll be seeing some good things.
And Dr. Silvers, as we find time somewhere down the road for the dashboard, all that material would be lovely to be trended and reported so that we just can look at it over time and just have a point of reference. So thank you. Thank you, Dr. Harbeck. Let's see. Is there anybody left? Dr. Silvers, please, our superintendent.
Well, I think everybody said everything that I wanted to say. It's like it gets to that point. Where I just want to say thank you. I want to point out a couple groups of people, and not to sort of belittle others, but I do want to point out, our site secretaries and our general clerks. The amount of interaction that's happening at the school sites and at the district office, in terms of COVID, everything COVID, and these are not easy conversations to have, with families when you're dealing with kids that are sick, and you're dealing with family members that are sick, when you're parsing through positive tests and negative tests, and trying to figure out who needs to quarantine when and where, and talking to Dr. Dougal, and then having to have that conversation again with a parent. And when the state and the county aren't on the same page with anything. And so it's really, really unfortunate that the county and the state can't get aligned. We really hope they do. And just a quick update as it relates to that. I mean, we spent quite a bit of time yesterday reviewing LA Department of Public Health new orders. And I thought we did a pretty good job of getting information out as quickly as possible. And then, we find out this morning that the California Department of Public Health came out with new orders. And so now LADPH is reassessing the orders that came out yesterday. And so we're going to be working on another set of orders to send out, or another set of a recap of new orders potentially in the next few days, probably early next week. So, I just want to point out our general clerks and our secretaries. I know other people were mentioned. Everybody's important in this process. But frontline, taking those phone calls and taking the hits from families and having to have these hard conversations with families is really, really challenging. At the same time, as Dr. Dougal shared, I do want to thank our families for the patients. I mean, we sat in testing centers for 3 hours. I talked to a community member who read a book, an entire novel in the time that they had to wait, for testing. And, I want to apologize for the miscommunication regarding Da Vinci students and their and not allowing them to be at the testing center. And that was it was not intentional by any means. And I know that my communication was off on that. So I apologize for that communication, that mistake in communication. Da Vinci students are absolutely part of this community. Unfortunately, we have a contract through our K-8 with Fulgent, and as messages have to go out so quickly, it was just an oversight. And so, definitely, we still are communicating with our Da Vinci partners. Really appreciate that ongoing commitment to communication, and apologize for that blip. And with that being said, I really have nothing else. I want to thank Mr. Mora again. I think we have about a month and a half here to really get some things done, Mr. Mora. And then, I wish you nothing but the best. That's it for me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Silvers. Let's go to minutes. We have a few minutes we're catching up with. Can I have a motion for 6-1 through 6-12, please?
You have a motion.
Thank you. Need a second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you. Comments or questions on the minutes? Useful to see all these. Obviously, we want to keep these more current. There's obviously events have precluded that. Thank you for catching up, Wendy. I know this was a lion's job. Let's have a motion. Let's have a vote, please.
Mr. Benuelos?
Aye.
Dr. Goldman?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Mr. Mora?
Aye.
Thank you.
Moving to action items, 7 general, 7.1, need a motion to adopt resolution 2122.10. This allows us to have this format of a meeting under the governor's rule. Can I have a motion, please?
You have a motion?
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Vote, please.
Mr. Benuelos?
Aye.
Dr. Goldman?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Mr. Mora?
Aye.
Thank you.
7.2, approved proposal with Clifford Moss. That's relevant to the presentation by Tim Carty this evening. Motion, please.
You have a motion to approve?
Thank you.
You have a second?
Thank you. For clarity, this again is the motion to pursue the item agenda to pursue the exploration of a bond, not the pursuit thereof. A vote, please, Wendy.
Mr. Benuelos?
Aye.
Dr. Goldman?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Mr. Mora?
Aye.
Due to the specificity of some of these, we need to take them individually for one more time. 7.3, the first reading of Resolution 21/2211, the resolution to rename the former namesake of 138th Street School and to rename the other school districts. Need a motion, and I think we need a reading.
Yeah, I'll read it if we just pull it up as a first reading.
Motion first, please.
You have a motion?
Thank you, Roger.
Yes, second.
Thank you, Nelson.
Okay, so I'll read this resolution, the Wiseburn Unified School District into the record, resolution number, Wendy, slide back up, sorry. Number 21/22.11, resolution to rename the former namesake of 138th Street School and to rename the other district schools. Whereas Education Code 35020 provides the governing board the authority to fix and describe the duties to be performed by all those employed by the Wiseburn Unified School District. And whereas on June 10th, 2020, the district board took action to authorize the superintendent to form a committee and a process to change the name of Peter Burnett Elementary School. Whereas the board took action on June 10th, 2020 to put a temporary name in place, 138th Street School, while also taking steps to initiate a community-oriented renaming process. Whereas in accordance with District Board Policy 7310, naming of facilities, the Citizens Advisory Committee convened on September 30, 2021, November 4, 2021, and December 7, 2021 to explore the renaming of 138th Street School, formerly Peter Burnett Elementary School, Richard Henry Dana Middle School, Juan Cabrillo Elementary School, excuse me, and Juan de Anza Elementary School. Representatives from these schools were present, which included administrators, teachers, classified staff, parents, students, and members from the greater Wiseburn community. Whereas the committee has recommended that the district rename all schools in the district, which includes 138th Street School, formerly Peter Burnett Elementary School, Richard Henry Dana Middle School, Juan Cabrillo Elementary School, and Juan de Anza Elementary School. Now, therefore, the board hereby approves the renaming of the school formerly named Peter Burnett Elementary and the committee's recommendation to rename all school sites, including Richard Henry Dana Middle School, Juan Cabrillo Elementary, and Juan de Anza Elementary School, passed and adopted potentially on the 25th day of January 2022 by the Wiseburn Unified School District. This serves as the first reading.
Thank you, Dr. Silver. So for clarity, this is the recommendation of the CAC. This is not an action item other than the reading of it. We are not voting to proceed or not proceed, just the reading of the recommendation of the CAC for clarity for our board members. Any comments or questions here, please?
Dr. Goldman, I'm not sure, but I see it looks like Rebecca has her hand up. I'm not sure if that's a comment. Let me close it. Okay, I guess she put her hand down. Rebecca, if you had a comment, you could raise your hand. Screen back.
Yes, no, I just, in the interest, we
Nothing
did close the public hearing, but if we're going to allow comment, let's make it for anybody who's interested in commenting at this time. We'll give you one more opportunity.
Let me see. Nope.
All right, Mr. Baki, then let us take it to a vote, please.
Mr. Benuelos,
Aye.
Dr. Goldman,
Aye.
Mr. Martinez,
Aye.
Mr. Moore.
Aye.
7.4 and 7.5, two sides of the same coin, if you will, can be taken together if someone is so inclined to move them.
All right, motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Roger, Nelson and Roger, respectively. This has received the Wiseburn faculty initial proposal and the district's initial response.
Comment, Dr. Goldman?
Please.
Just want to thank President Liza Downer, WFA, and also Vice President Chris Torrey, WFA, just for the ongoing collaboration, and lead negotiator Jennifer Flanders for just being collaborative. I mean, our goal here is to be collaborative, and we look forward to this ongoing collaboration through this negotiation process. And thank Dr. Harbeck and Dr. Dougal for a lot of work that goes into reviewing contracts.
And Dr. Silvers, this is just the initial opening conversation. What is the projected timeline in a typical year when this would be resolved or final agreements made?
I can answer that, but I think Nisha, do you want to, I mean, this is your wheelhouse. You want to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends on how long, due to COVID right now, right? It depends on how often we may be able to meet.
Right.
We do hope to have this done prior to the end of the school year. That is absolutely, in the best interest of WFA and the district to be collaborative in their efforts to come to an agreement prior to the end of the school year, if not sooner.
And Nisha, maybe we should clarify too, that this actually is an expired, we're actually fully opening our entire contract. So where in previous years, you're only negotiating 2 items and health and welfare, wages, health and welfare. This year, the entire contract's open. So we're gonna try and renew that contract for another 3 years. So it's a much heavier lift this year with the contract negotiation. So likely we'll try and get some of the major points done by the end of the year, but we could be negotiating some of the other loose ends moving into next year.
And pending agreement, the first part of this, assuming if we are able to get a multi-year deal, will be retroactive, correct?
Yes. So we're talking wage like salary.
If that were the case, yeah, indeed.
Likely. I mean, that's it's negotiable, but that's usually how it works.
All right. Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. Hearing no other conversation, Wendy, please.
Mr. Banuelos?
Aye.
Dr. Goldman?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Mr. Mora?
Aye.
Thank you.
We have 2 settlement agreements that I believe can be taken together, 7.6 and 7.7. If a motion, please.
I'd like the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Martinez.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Manuelos. Comments from staff, or this is obviously personnel, private matters. No questions. Vote, please.
Mr. Banuelos?
Aye.
Dr. Goldman?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Mr. Moore?
Aye.
Thank you.
Moving to action items, facilities 8.1, 8.2, both concrete. May I have a motion, please?
Have a motion. I'll second.
Thank you both, Mr. Nelson and Israel. This is just fixing the trees and the concrete that was broken from the prior replacement that needed to be done. One comment I have here, by the way, is thank you to the district for being diligent with our money, but not just going with low cost and using a reputable, respected organization to do right by us. So thank you. Not that the other wasn't, that's not my intent, but we have experience with this one that's proven a good choice for us. So thank you very much. Wendy, vote please.
Mr. Banuelos?
Aye.
Dr. Goldman?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Mr. Mora?
Aye.
Thank you.
Action items, these can be taken together. This is consent, items 9 through 9.7.
We have a motion for items 9.1 through 9.7.
Thank you, Roger.
You have a second?
Thank you, Nelson. Any questions or comments here?
None.
I appreciated the review to help me understand Lexia as a tier 2 intervention and LPAC as the ELD training. So thank you very much. Wendy, vote please.
Mr. Banuelos?
Aye.
Dr. Goldman?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Mr. Moore? Thank you.
Aye.
Moving to personnel, action items 10. I believe we can take these on. We may have some comment relevant here if we can get a motion, please.
Motion for 10.1 through 10.5.
Thank you, Roger.
Second.
Thank you, Israel. Dr. Silvers and the cabinet, I think you wanted to call out a couple things on this.
Yeah, I think we're gonna start, let me look here. Let's start with 10.2, certificated staff resignations. I think we have Mr. Paredes on. I think he's still on. Maybe we can pull him over, Jason, and see if he is gonna speak.
Good evening, everybody.
Evening, Mr. Paredes.
Good evening.
First of all, I'd like to take advantage of this moment to thank Mr. Mora for his years of service to our community and school district. You're much appreciated.
Thank you, Alberto.
So thank you to the Weisburn Board, Superintendent Dr. Silvers, and everyone else here today for giving me the opportunity to share a little about Mrs. Tanya Woodward, who is resigning. Mrs. Woodward is a kind and loving teacher. She really takes the time to get to know all her students and their families. She then uses what she learns about them to support and engage the students in their learning. For example, I was in a class recently and the students were solving a math problem. During my visit there, the students were helping another student in the class determine how much money her family needed to pay for movie tickets. All the students in the room were excited. They were trying to help the student, her parents, and the little brother get to the movies, and they wanted to make sure that they had enough money to get there. It was really neat to see them working together. Mrs. Woodward has the ability to create a classroom environment where students feel safe and confident. She is firm but loving. She instills a growth mindset in all her students. Her students truly believe in the power of not yet and are always willing to challenge themselves to learn new things. Her students love her, they trust her, and always come to class ready to learn for her. In short, Mrs. Woodward is an amazing teacher. She's innovative, full of energy, and she will be missed. While we are sad to see her go, we do wish her nothing but the best. Congratulations, Mrs. Woodward.
Thank you, Alberto. Any other comments, Dr. Silvers, or thoughts you'd like to make at this time?
Yeah, I would like to echo, I mean, Albert said it very well, and I would say that, one thing that I would share about Ms. Woodward is her flexibility. She was, one of the first people to have a classroom that just looked different than other classrooms, with flexible seating and small groups, and just a really, really phenomenal way of instructing students where they were engaged. And generally speaking, when there was a new initiative, she was on point, ready to try it, ready to do it. And just a real supporter of progressive education, and really a loss, and while I wish her the best in her future endeavors, definitely an instructional loss to the district. But yeah, so I'll end with that.
Thank you, Dr. Silvers. Ms. Mazzarella.
Yes, good evening, everyone. And Mr. Mora, I do wish you well, and I appreciate your service to Weisburn, and we will miss you. So thank you for everything you've done.
Thank you.
I'd like to acknowledge Stephanie Russia Tatankovic. She's one of our school psychologists, and she's also our district board certified behavior specialist, board certified behavior analyst, BCBA. She will be leaving to go in a different direction in her career. So we will miss her. She's been our preschool school psychologist. She's been with the district for 6 years, and she has provided training for all of our incoming instructional aides. She has supported many, many students with and without IEPs. She's highly skilled. She's hardworking. She is a highly skilled clinician, but she also has a passion for families and kids, and she really cares about them. So we're really going to miss her, but we wish her well, and all the best.
Thank you, Peggy. For all of our teachers, we appreciate you. We're sorry to, and our BCBA, all those who are involved in our district, we're sorry to see you go. Tanya, you're one of the ones that I did know and respect, and really a sad moment for us. So we do wish you well, and sorry to see you on your leaving us. Any other comments? Let's have a vote.
Mr. Benuelos?
Aye.
Dr. Goldman?
Aye.
Mr. Martinez?
Aye.
Mr. Mora?
Aye.
We do not need a second close, thankfully. We do have upcoming dates and events. Dr. Silvers?
Yes, we do. I say thankfully, we have a holiday, Martin Luther King Jr. Birthday on Monday, January 17th. So we have a 3-day weekend. And I think that everybody in the district deserves this day, a chance to regroup and be ready to get back at it, the Tuesday thereafter. Also, big day, Tuesday, January 25th. I just want to note that that's a change in date. It is a regularly scheduled board meeting. It's a Tuesday because typically that the end of that week is the Access Superintendent Symposium. I have decided not to attend that event, but this was scheduled, so we're going to just hold to this date on January 25th. So 6 p.m. open session. That will be for the second reading of the renaming. Just some highlights from that. We'll do the second reading, potential action, as well as bringing back some of the requests from the board for today from Mr. Carty's presentation. And then our regular meeting on February 10th, 6 p.m. Thursday. Other than that, lots of teaching and lots of learning.
Good stuff. Any other agenda or other items to bring up at this time? Anyone? Hearing none, then it is, what time is it? Can't see the time.
8:21.
8:21. There, thank you. At 8:21 today, we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you all for attendance and have a good evening.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.